Hello, hello, and welcome to Millennial Notebook. My name is Stella,
And my name is Emily.
and here we talk about living life as a millennial in the modern age.
Get comfy, grab your notebook, and let's enjoy the ride together.
Hey everyone, so today is going to be a special episode because it will just be me today. And as promised, I will make this one-on-one, this date with me as special as possible. And speaking of dating, that's what I will be talking about today. If you've been listening to our previous episodes, my one of the things that I like to talk about, because I have a lot of experience on the topic, is dating. And with the duo that I have with Emily, since she is dating someone who has been with her since high school, right? It's a long-term relationship, exclusive relationship. And so I have the most, I suppose, in in the podcast, the most relationship, or rather dating experience. And as an introvert, I think there's a lot to have to navigate around. And so I wanted to focus on that, dating as an introvert. Now, we also have an episode on introversion and learning how to make friends, which is a little bit of a different topic. So, and if you're interested in that topic, in the general, like surviving and learning how to make friends and learning how to just deal with life as an introvert in general, listen to episode 2. But today I'll be talking about just dating as an introvert and how to navigate this difficult environment, because dating itself is pretty difficult. So learning how to be able to navigate through this painlessly is something I want to be able to give to you today. And okay, let me just start with let's define what I mean by an introvert, right? Because there are so many ways that people perceive this word. And I want to be able to focus on a specific definition of introversion according to Carl Jung. Okay? And so Carl Jung is a psychologist, or is he a psychiatrist? I can't really recall which one exactly he is, but there you go. He's a psychiatrist, excuse me. He's a Swiss psychiatrist. And the way he describes an introvert is basically how a person uses energy and recharges. And so that's what I mean here, right? I'm not referring to introverts as people who are shy or who don't like spending time with people. It's more of just how they are, how they see the world and how they get energy and express their energy in themselves. So we'll be working on that. If you're interested in learning about the definition of introversion according to Carl Jung, then please have a quick Google, or you can check out the link that I will be adding in the show notes. Really interesting, actually. Or you can listen to our introversion episode. Wink, wink. So yeah, let me just dive into that. So my number one tip is to just... Of course, and I think this is a basic, a basic kind of tip. But surprisingly, with the pace that we are taking dating nowadays, especially with online dating, it's very, people kind of don't end up doing it as much, but also depending on your culture and dating style. But my number one tip is to just talk and get to know them first. I know, basic, right? But like I said, with online dating especially, which I have a lot of majority of my previous relationships are based from these matches, but sometimes it's just the speed is just so quick and it can get very overwhelming for an introvert, right? Especially if the other person is, more used to a faster pace, or, if they're looking for something casual, or if you're looking for something casual. Sometimes you don't even give yourself the space to just get to know them first or talk to them. And if you don't do so, I mean, I can imagine that it would be very overwhelming, right? And so I suggest that, just see that you're not talking to a crazy person because, especially if you're online dating, right? There's just so many things that you don't know about the other person. They're practically a stranger. And so finding the space and the time to get to know them first would be something that would make you feel like you can see whether or not this person would just take up too much of your energy or not. As an introvert, that's kind of very important, right? Okay, next would be to not overfill your schedule. Now, I am guilty of not following this tip, and that's why I wanted to mention it, because I end up getting burnt out. As defined a while ago, right? That introverts they use up their energy when they spend time with people. And so, assuming that you don't work from that you don't work from home, excuse me. So if you work in the office, or whether or not you work from home, right? If you're interacting with a lot of people on a daily basis, then that means you are constantly using up your energy. And if you overfill your schedule, right? For example, full weekends with dates with, whether one person that you want to focus on or several people that you want to date and get to know, it can be very easy to kind of just, especially if you're an overachiever like me. Just kidding. It could be very easy to fill things up. Excuse me, my cat is playing with a paper bag. Let me just take that away. So yeah, just make sure that you pace yourself at least, or like just set one date at a time, or at the pace that you feel like you can expend your energy and not get depleted. Okay, then the next one is to establish your own pace and see if it works with the other person. So I think this is mildly related to the getting to know them first tip, but assuming that you haven't been friends for very long or not at all, then you don't really know their pace and they don't know your pace. And so it's very important to establish that pace there, so that you don't really burn out, and nor will they burn out. And I find this very interesting because it's not it's surprisingly not that common to talk about it, or even establish that early on in relationships. And it's funny because my friend was mentioning this. So I have a friend who has been in a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, and at the very start, because he's very communicative and she's quite extroverted, or so she says. And so when they were first dating, and he's super introverted. And so when they were first dating, she wanted to keep hanging out with him like almost on a daily, and he was exhausted, right? But thank goodness he's very communicative, because he sat her down, saying like, look, I can't deal with this. Like, I'm going to burn out. Like, if we keep doing this all the time. And so I need a little bit more space in between our dates. And I think that's wonderful. I myself currently am dating someone, and I see him pretty often because of circumstances. And yeah, and I think he and I are just trying to figure out what the perfect pace is for each of us. Like, we're still at the kind of honeymoon phase of just getting to know each other, and we kind of want to see each other all the time. But at the same time, we're two people that are very particular about having our own time and space. But we're navigating around that, right? Like, both of us are kind of going home exhausted, and having to go to work the next day. It's just we haven't been able to find ways to recharge. And you don't even have to have an answer right away, of course. Like, you can take your time and just figure it out together. But I think figuring out what that is and establishing that once you have found it is very important. Next would be setting boundaries. Now, so this is a little bit different from what I mentioned a while ago on your own pace. Maybe slightly related, but when you set your boundaries, right, it's just figuring out what is okay for you and what is not, and when is it okay for you and when is it not. Now, this will vary per person and per culture, of course, and dating in the international scene, and what I mean by that is like having to meet and interact with people from all sorts of cultures and ethnicities and backgrounds and mixes of those things, right? It's very difficult to figure out what is the norm. And because of that, I think it's very important that you figure out your own boundaries. And I think this is also a process in and of itself, right? Especially if you are a person who hasn't really dated that much, or even if you've dated in a particular way. For example, you've only ever dated offline. And what I mean by that is naturally like meeting people through friends or through work or school. And then you're new to the online dating scene, right? So you wouldn't really know, okay, I'd be okay with this and not with this. But figuring that out along the way, noting it down for future reference, and then establishing those boundaries with the other person, I think is very important, regardless of whether you're an introvert or not. But I feel like it's even harder for introverts because most of the time, like well, at least in my experience, like I don't want to speak for everyone, but since if an introvert is dating an extrovert, for example, it's very hard to kind of figure, most of the time we'd end up having to go with the flow of the more extroverted person. And so, and since you're just getting to know each other, right? Like people have a tendency to kind of like it's like a dance, right? You're figuring out your tempo, and so establishing clear boundaries is very difficult at the start. But I would recommend that you do that, especially if you were an introvert, just because I feel like some introverts have more energy boundaries than others, right? And so communicating those things would be very important. And finally, my last tip would be talking about common interests. It could be awkward silences are one of the fears that I have as an introvert myself because, I don't know, I want to conserve my energy, but also I don't want the other person to get bored. Duh. Like I want to impress them, of course. And with that considered, I think if you ever are not sure about what to talk about, just like figuring out what their what their interests are and then talking about them. And these are tips also mentioned in episode 2 of the Millennial Notebook podcast. But that's how Emily and Jono, her boyfriend, ended up dating and getting to know each other, right? They were geeking out and talking about Final Fantasy. And sometimes you don't realize that you'd end up playing that hobby together or that interest together, and then that blossoms into a wonderful, wonderful relationship. So far I think those are my tips. And the rest of it would be really just be yourself. And we have so many dating stories in this podcast. So if you're curious about mixing that with introversion, then have a listen to them, please. Yeah, it's a short and sweet episode, but I feel like, sometimes being very concise is also the only thing we really need, especially when it comes to practical tips on these things. And really, in this relationship that I have with Emily, I'm the more concise person, really. I don't really, I don't know if people have noticed, but I don't really banter as much as she does, but this is who I am. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the tips that I have for dating as an introvert. All of these tips in bullet point form will be sent on our show notes. So I hope you will have a great day, and please do comment if you feel like you have other tips that you'd like to add. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time. The next episode will be Emily by herself without me, and so that's a surprise even for me. So look forward to it, everyone, and thank you very much. Have a great day. Goodbye. See you next time.